Okay, cool. You ready to go?
Yeah, I'm ready. Psyched. Stoked to learn some new
Stoked?
stuff.
Maximum stoke. Okay. Let's play this and let's get started. All right. So I see you have a Paladin. You're level 221. Did you come back to the game during Destiny?
No, I'm actually the dude blue shep in your this. I've been asking some questions on your Twitch.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, like I've been playing for around 2.5, 3 weeks now.
Okay.
Just started playing.
Mm-hmm.
Started like, well, I played like pre Big Bang
Mm-hmm.
when I was like 8.
Yeah, a little time ago.
Just got back into it, like super stoked to have a game to like just put massive amounts of hours into.
Mm-hmm. Well, you picked
So
the right
yeah,
one,
like,
so it's never done here.
yeah.
And when you say put massive amounts of hours into, what are you generally looking for? Like, what do you enjoy doing?
I mean a little bit of everything. Like I paid first for the like small session. That was before I started doing like the Legion and Link skills stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that I had like kind of knew what I was doing with that. Like I've seen most of the videos, like talks about legions and links and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm,
But
mm-hmm.
still feel like there's a lot to learn and like a lot to min max around that. Like just like increasing my range with like 300k from having like 6 characters being level 70 is just massive.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, all of the
like
systems in the game work together. It's a little bit hard to figure out where do you want to spend your time, right?
yeah, but I feel like that's the greatest thing about MapleStory. Like no matter what thing you spend time on, like you just get things anyway. Like
Mm-hmm.
all the things you do are good to do, no matter
Yep.
if it's like the most efficient way to do it or not.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you level up a character, you can do some more bosses that can give you income. You level a character that you end up not liking, but it gives you a Link and a Legion buff, and then that makes your main character stronger. Or you work on your main, and even if you don't level up, you can still gain damage without your range going up, even, right? So there's always something
Yeah.
that helps you move forward, and it's not about whether you spend time or not, but it's like whether or not where you spend time. So when people are coming to the game and they're like, what is some big advice that you can give? Usually I say just try to just log into the game, enjoy yourself, and just do stuff and then have fun. And hopefully at the end of the day, you feel like you enjoyed yourself when you log out, because you're going to get to the point where there's going to be this min-maxing and there's going to be these dailies and these things that you feel like you need to do, because the game is very big on FOMO, right? Fear of missing out, that they want to make you feel like there's a whole bunch of stuff that you still have to do because it's all very important and it gives you a lot of value. And it's going to come to the point eventually where when the daily reset happens or where you log out, it's like, oh, I had to do all this other stuff still and I didn't get to it. And at that point, I feel like it starts becoming like pressure and it starts becoming like chores. And at that point, you see a lot of people like, I don't like the game anymore because I'm feeling like forced to do certain things and I don't want to necessarily do those things. So as long as you can hold on to, I'm just logging in, I'm just doing my thing, I'm just having fun, then as long as you can hold on to that, I think you're gonna have a good time playing.
Yeah. Like that's kind of the goal that was now for me was
Mm-hmm.
to like kind of I know that's like the exact opposite of what you said, but like I kind of enjoyed the like daily grind. Like
Mm-hmm.
I log in, I know what to do, and then when I've done that, I'm like, oh nice, now I can work some of my link skills. Like I
Mm-hmm.
don't do like there's so much things to do, but I like pick out what I feel like is the most fun and
Mm-hmm.
essential for me to do. So like I know you have the like spreadsheet.
Mm-hmm. I
I
have a
don't
few, yeah.
remember. Yeah. So I've copied that and like made my own version of it
Mm-hmm.
with just the things that I do. So I kind of like go over it and check all the boxes every day.
Yeah, the dailies
Uh,
dailies one, right?
yeah,
Yep.
yeah. The dailies and the weeklies. Yeah.
Yep.
I feel like that is like a super nice way of like staying on
Mm-hmm.
the like the right track of doing the most by doing the littlest or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Say.
You mean like the best return for the value based on the amount of time that you're spending, basically.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I got that. And that's been fun for you so far. Did you have any questions on that, on the dailies that you're doing, weeklies that you're doing, and any questions there?
I mean, that's probably mostly like how I should progress from here, and kind of like when I can do the different stuff, because like in your spreadsheet it's really clear on like what levels
Mm-hmm.
or what level you should be in order to start doing something.
Mm-hmm.
But I find it like really difficult to get into some of the content, like either just getting a party for it, or like for Helix, for example. Like no one wants to do that in like a group. I've had boost once, and yeah, stuff like that, basically.
Yeah, some of those are, it's more like theoretical. Some of those, the further you go, the more it'll be a little bit class reliant, right? Some classes will be able to just follow that on their very first character, even with like a legion of like 500 or less, and they can just do the whole thing. And then some classes will be more reliant on legion and the link skills to give them those base stats. So when we're talking about base stats, I'm talking about critical rate, critical damage, IED, boss damage. Those stats come in a very large portion from your legion and your links. And some classes in their kits have a lot of it already, so they can just move on, and they don't really get stopped. As long as your equips aren't absolutely shit, then you can just kind of keep that level range going. But if you rely a little bit more on those stats, then you will eventually slow down faster, and you will have to work on legion and links more to keep up with everyone else. But then once you get to the end game, those other stronger stats that you have will start coming in again, and it'll equalize near the end.
Yeah.
Good, but yeah, they'll just have a little bit of a head start. So the main reason, I guess for context, that the level thing exists here, and that also in the progression grid, I have the level basically as the top thing, is basically because in the past we would always look at level damage range, right? You've already mentioned it, but now damage range, I mean, it still means something, but it means very little at this point, because someone with the same damage range as you, well, you can probably imagine, right? Someone who has a lower damage range than you, but for critical damage has like 60% instead of 28%, is going to do way more damage than you. Because damage, like critical damage, is not shown in the range window, because you have to hit a crit first. And even if your critical rate is 100%, which you'd think the game would know that if you have 100 crit, then it could increase your damage range, right? But it doesn't do that. So it's still like an on-hit effect that's only calculated when you hit the monster. Same thing with IED. IED can have a bunch of on-hit effects as well. Like, for example, you as a Paladin, you've got the armor break skill, right? Which breaks the defense of a monster by a lot. But still, that can't show in your stat window, because it only applies when you hit a monster that has the debuff on. And at the moment that you're hitting, the game doesn't know that it's going to apply. But at the moment that you hit, then the on-hit effect is applied, and then your, what I call your functional IED, is actually higher than your visual, than what you see in your stat window. So for some of those things, it's important to know when you're trying to balance your stats, specifically around the stats in the progression grid, of how much is actually being applied versus how much is your stat window showing. And you have to learn more about the game and about your character than just what's shown in your stat window, because you can't really 100% rely on it as much as you would want to, keep it simple like that. It does get more complicated than that pretty quickly. And the result of that is by realigning where some of the stats go, like your hyper stats and your legion grid and link skills and blah blah blah. Aligning what you aim for and where you put those stats can increase your damage by a whole lot without it looking like your range is really going up. Your range might even be going down, and some of the stats might not seem like a whole bunch is happening. Like if your ID goes from 81 to 85, that seems like that's not a big deal. But if you know the calculations behind everything, it actually is a really big deal. And all of it comes down to, as long as those fundamentals are in a good position, then the efficiency of all of the upgrades you make is just higher, and you will have to struggle less. You'll have to not swim against the current as much, but you can go with the flow more. And you don't have to, you don't hit walls as much, and you don't have to stop and be like, okay, now I need to work hardcore on this thing that I've neglected this whole time, and go super overboard on this other thing to make sure that it catches up with everything. So that's why I made the progression grid, so that you can kind of see like where should all the numbers roughly be, and as long as they are around that point, then you're good to go, and you can just keep going with the flow and you keep continuing, and there's nothing that you're really neglecting. But if there's something that you find like, okay, now I try to do the dailies around my level, and it's way too hard. It's not like, oh, I'm dying because I just don't know the boss and I just have to practice more. But it's really like, this is just impossible for me to do. Then you might go back to the progression grid and see like, okay, where am I really behind? Like, where am I deficient there? And then you want to, shift your priorities a little bit in terms of the dailies and the things that you're doing to make sure that you're definitely doing those things where you can catch up. And again, this comes back to what you said before, because then the efficiency there will be higher if you spend your time there versus on other things. And then you can, continue enjoying the game as much as possible with the time you have left over.
Yeah.
So that's how it's all like connected together, right? Those two commands, and hopefully also keeping on enjoying the games and spend the least of your time doing chores and the most of your time just having fun. So you mentioned some of the content. So what kind of content have you been doing like the last few days?
Like I've been doing Chaos Road Abyss for like I don't know if it was the first or the second time I did it.
Mm-hmm.
I have like most of my gear is, or well, the like hat, chest, and legs are CRA, and I need like 2 more emblems or whatever it is to get the weapon.
Yeah, the pieces
of
destruction,
like hesitant
right?
on the what?
Pieces of destruction, I think they're called, with the Vellum dragon on it, right?
Oh yeah. But I'm not kind of unsure on what weapon to get. Like I've been having so many conversations with people about like, can I go one hand? And they're like, no, go 2-hand mace. And I'm like, but can I go one hand? No, don't do it. Like get 1 attack speed and go 2-hand mace. But I feel like the only thing I don't enjoy about playing Paladin is that it's just a bit clunky if I don't have like. Or even when I have like green potion, but if I play one hand, it feels like it gets so super smooth, like instantly.
Yeah,
so
that's good intuition, because it is really, the attack speed is not, when you look at it mathematically, you do more damage, but it's not that much more in the beginning. The attack speed is not that much more on way more attacks. It's really just about being smoother when you're mobbing, and when you're bossing, being able to move out of the way of attacks a little bit faster so you don't die as easily. That's the main thing where the attack speed comes in. So you're like on the right track there, that you're questioning that. I was checking for me in game for the pieces. If you want a few pieces of destruction, I've got a few here. If you want to borrow.
Oh shit, man.
Got that good upper. How much is this? 200 weapons? Oh, this is a long time of saving though. 230 weapons almost. Gotta hoard. So so that's good. So you're using 2-handed now, yeah. So I would agree with you on that it is better early on to go for one-handed, and the main reason is because you keep your inner ability open and you don't have to get that attack speed +1, which is a little bit too difficult, I think, to roll early on, and that way you can hold on to the Meso Obtain and still reach the attack speed cap. So what I would advise is the combination of keeping the Sacred Rosary where it is now, that's fine. And then once you get the Princess No secondary, you move that one into Legendary, and you try to roll for something really nice there. And then when it's really nice, you can replace your current Sacred Rosary with it. And then you'll be losing some stats compared to people who will be saying that you need to use a shield. But you're planning for the long term, where eventually once you get to Absolab and once you get to Arcane, especially, then you want to move back into 2-handed, because then you will have not only the amount of resources that you need to upgrade those weapons to an extent that makes sense, but you'll also have enough of the Monster Park potions so you always have your green pot up, and you will have time to get more Honor EXP so you can redo your inner ability to get that attack speed +1. You just need time to be able to reliably get that attack speed +1, because the next step is not to just roll your top line. The next step is going to be to use money with circulators to roll one of the second or third line to a really good unique line in the inner ability, and then lock that, and then use honor experience to roll over the top line to get attack speed there. And that is going to be a project that you probably can only do once you're at like 1.5 million or so honor EXP to reliably get that attack speed back. So until you have that amount of honor EXP, I wouldn't touch your inner ability at all. and I would also just go for one-handed weapons until that amount of honor experience comes close. So in most scenarios, that probably means even for Absolab staying one-handed, and only once you get into arcane weapons, go for two-handed.
Yeah, like how should I think about? Well, by that point, I should make enough money not to have to worry about like re-scrolling a weapon from like start, right?
From start, what do you mean?
Like getting a potential scroll on it and like getting it up to unique or legendary or whatever.
Yeah, once you're so I think, yeah, so Sweetwater you go up to epic, and then it usually depends a little bit on how long you take in these stages, right, and how quickly you move on to the next item. But for your Fafnir, you go at least to unique. Sometimes people go to legendary. Kind of depends on how much you really need the damage, but if you feel like there's enough damage, the up to unique is pretty cheap. From unique to legendary, and then rolling within legendary can get very expensive very quickly. So generally, if you have like okay unique lines, then you can keep unique, and as long as you can kill all the monsters near your level, and which means as long as your arcane power tracks and your boost nodes track, because that's where a lot of your damage comes from, as long as those are high enough to keep you killing everything, then you can keep your weapon just unique. And then, you know, Star Force probably with events and everything goes up to like 16, because the Fafnir weapon can transfer hammer into Absolab. So, but then you have to know, I'm taking one-handed hammer, and then you stay one-handed hammer, because you can only transfer into the same type of item. But then you can move your Star Force -1, and your potential will go down to epic, but you'll immediately start with, you know, if you have a 16 or 17 Fafnir and unique potential, it'll go into, well, 1 star less, whatever is 16 or 15, Absolab with unique potential, and you can immediately start from that point, and you don't have to start over with potential scroll and with a stamp and with tier up and cubes and all that stuff. So that's
exactly.
When you get further in the game.
That was something. Yeah, because that was something like new I learned, that you can't transfer from like one-handed, like you can't transfer from like a two-handed sword to a one-handed sword, or like a one-handed to a two-handed, or and with the mace it's like I kind of get that it's a mace, but I didn't know that one-handed, two-handed was different as well.
Yeah, the main thing that's difference between them is the multiplier. So there's a hidden, or not really hidden, everyone knows about it, but there's a weapon attack multiplier on the weapon, and that's basically because of to compensate for the fact that if two-handed you can't use a shield and then a shield, so to try to equalize it. But at the end of the day, because of GMS and KMS differences, in GMS still the two-handed eventually is better. It's not like 20% damage more or something like that. It's pretty close, but there is still a favor for the two-handed. So, but it requires the inner ability. So I think you make a lot of money, or I know you make a lot of money on your inner ability, as long as you can keep it on what I call like a mobbing inner ability, for example. So you have Meso obtain, maybe some drop rate, and you keep that all the way until you get to the bosses that are really tough, like you get to Hard Lucid, Hard Will, and into Tenebra's bosses until, you know, like 250, 255 area. At that point, you really want to decide, like, am I really strong enough? Can I really still do everything? Then you can still keep your mobbing inner ability. But for you, there'll be a little bit more pressure, because you'll want to move to two-handed weapon at that point, and then it makes sense to go for attack speed +1. But some people might do, like, I don't know, like 10%, they might roll like 10% crit rate, you know, because crit rate will be very useful. Or they might roll like 10% drop rate and maybe 15% meso, and then +1 attack speed, so that you can hit your max attack speed, you can do the mobbing, your bossing will probably still be fine, but also if you still want to train past that area, you can still make a lot of money, and then you can always, you know, go like max reroll later, because, you know, the inner ability like that will pay for itself many times over.
Yeah, and in regards to the rosary, I actually have a shield that is scrolled, or well, cubed, kind of decently already. It's like all the way down in like the backup / possibly relevant items. I didn't really know if it was or not.
Yeah, so you can use this one temporarily, but that's you definitely don't have to go past this. The reason I say is that even if you go for, you know, like 11 or 12 star shield with these potential, it's going to be around the same point, or maybe a little bit weaker, but around the same point as like a Princess No secondary, because it doesn't have any weapon attack. So it's very similar. So from like a streamlining point of view, you really only go shield if you're planning to take the shield past 15 stars and really go for 17 stars. And to probably only do that if this is like your second or third character and you're just trying to, you know, speed up your progress through the whole thing. You can totally get by with just having the Princess Snow secondary and losing like a little bit of stat on the secondary. But then once you switch to two-handed weapon, you don't have to redo your secondary. It'll save you a lot of money. So this is fine to use now. You can use this together with the Fafnir one-handed, and then go into Absolab one-handed, and then just in the background work on the Princess Snow secondary, and then that could also give you the benefit of having what's called a mobbing and a bossing secondary, right? So that if you roll a secondary with like 2 lines of boss and 1 line of IED or something crazy like that, you don't really want that because it's too focused on just bossing, right? And if you wear it when you're mobbing, it's essentially just a clean one and it doesn't really increase your damage. But you'll always have this shield to fall back on as long as you have one-handed when you're mobbing. So if that Princess Snow rolls something like that, you can always just switch into that when you're bossing, and then that'll be stronger when you're bossing and this when you're mobbing. So you can kind of take the benefit out of already having invested into the shield, in that sense that you'll have more outs now on the other secondary that'll be relevant for you for the game, and you won't have to get a like a hybrid secondary that both does bossing and IED or IED and attack, to make sure that when you're both mobbing and bossing, it's beneficial to you. So you can use it as kind of a safeguard for that.
Yeah. Okay. Then it feels kind of fine.
Yeah.
Like a total waste of money anyway.
No, yeah. Well, I'd like to not really just hag on like why something was like a bad idea, but like how could something technically be more efficient? But how can we make the most of the situation that we already have without making you feel bad about it? Because that doesn't really do anyone any good, right? You already invested the money, so how can we make sure that if you were to do it again, you know what your options are, and then right now, how can we make it as give you as much value back as you invested into it as possible?
I feel like I have like the craziest luck with cubing. Like I've spent.
Yeah, I've seen very few people
like
around your level with this kind of potential, like a 220 if you just started. It's pretty.
Yeah,
it's pretty good.
I think I've spent like 500 mil on my weapons, like all the like important stuff. I've spent 500 mil on, and then I've tried to cube my greed pendant for probably like 1.5 bill. I've tried to get it up to unique. Just won't go. Still epic.
Yeah.
It just won't budge.
Here you have the law of averages that is coming into play.
Yeah.
Lucky here, unlucky there. It's unavoidable. It'll always come back.
Yeah, but I feel like I'm at a like decent point now with my gear. Just to like weapon, getting that, and like a one hand.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be the main thing is getting the Fafnir one-handed weapon, and you can do that this Thursday. You can get it, right?
Yeah.
No. Or Wednesday right after reset at 2 a.m. if you're still up. If you're a real gamer, you'll be 2:01 a.m. getting in there.
That's rough. I did that last week. Like it was way too rough.
Oh yeah, because you thought you would get enough pieces and then you were one short. You're like,
Yeah.
Unlucky.
Yeah.
Unlucky.
Kind of sucked. So then I started like cubing, or well, like star forcing the two-handed mace. I was like, yeah, I can't be bothered using the out guard anymore. Like it was 20k difference or something. You're like going to a clean Sweetwater hammer. So I was like, yeah, I just can't.
Well, and the other thing is because you mentioned a 20k, which is the range, which is it's still really the big number that shows up right when you're hovering over an item, but there's a way bigger difference between the Utgard and the Sweetwater, right? Than the 20k range.
Was there like ignore defense and boss damage too, right?
Exactly, yeah, and it's 30 boss and 10% IED, which at this low of a level is insane. You're basically getting a line and a half of potential, of like legendary potential, for free on the item, so that gives you a huge start. The other thing is also, though, to know for Sweetwater is that it is also a rank of attack speed lower. Even the one-handed for Sweetwater are also a rank of attack speed lower, so you'll feel an even bigger difference when you're moving on went to the Fafnir, to the one-handed, because it's going to be way faster. And the one thing I did want to mention with that is you talked about green pots. Are you able to cover yourself with, or cover your playtime with green pots? Don't pour it out over your head. But
no, like nowhere close.
Are
That's
you?
why it
Are
feels
you
so sluggish.
yeah, yeah. Are you familiar with that you can buy extra coupons for Monster Park?
Yeah, yeah, I've seen that. I don't think I've done it before, but I know that you can do it. But right now, I've just been working on the links the past couple of days. Haven't really thought about it that much.
But so you if you do you do Monster Park every day, and do you do 2 runs or?
I usually forget that one. Like,
Okay. Yeah.
I always remember to do the Maple tour. Always forget Monster Park.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Sometimes I remember it. But it's mostly like I do it the same day, and then I have 4 potions, and then I buy the totem, and then I grind for 2 hours, and then I have 0 for the next day.
Yeah, I see. I see. So if you you can buy up to 5 extra runs per day, and you can do up to 7 runs per day, which as well around your level is pretty good EXP. But every box gives like between 15 and 30 coins, so like average of 22.5. So if you do 7 runs, that's 155 or something like that, 158 coins. So that would be enough to buy like 30 like green, or you buy like what is it, like 8 green, 8 red, and then you have left for like 5 gold or something, right? So you could do a whole totem and have some left. Once you get into again, I'm not trying to pile on dailies, right? Because if it's not fun for you, or if you're forgetting about it, it's probably not the most fun thing for you to do. But it is very good for those fundamentals, because like attack speed is again one of those hidden stats that you don't see in your stat window, you don't see in your damage range at all, but you're gonna feel it a lot, right? It is definitely one of those where once you get used to it, it's really hard to kick. It's basically like being on coke. But once you you're doing enough of those Monster Park runs, and you always have that on, the game will feel a lot smoother to play. So I guess like as a little advice as an option, because when you're just starting out, it's really expensive to do those extra 5 runs. So I get that you wouldn't do that immediately, but at this point, like if you have the money to get things to unique and to legendary, I would definitely look into doing the Monster Park runs, and it's a good chunk of EXP every day as well. So it'll help you steadily progress, even if you don't have time for like a whole totem, for example.
Yeah, but I feel like that could probably motivate me now as well, because I think I've at least done it like no, wait, you need to do it like 77 times, or is it 7 times per?
Yeah, so it's 7. Well, every day you could do 7. So if you don't miss a single run, it'll be 11 weeks of running in a row, and then you can get the Monster Parker for that day, or for all the days, the 7-day Monster Parker, and then you'll have the extra IED available all days of the week.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's
so far away.
Yeah, it seems very far away, and then
seeing the numbers is just like ugh.
Yeah. No, I get that for sure. It feels like you'll never get it, and then I mean, I had the same, right? I'm trying to level my sacred symbols on my characters, and it's like, 1,100 symbols to level up, and you can get 10 a day, so that's a lot of days. Okay, it's like, okay, that's almost 4 months.
You don't want to think about that. You just want to do it.
Yeah.
Like whatever happens. Like.
Yeah, and then once you're almost close, it's like when you're leveling, right? If you're leveling from 0 to 10%, it takes forever. But leveling from 90 to 100, it feels like it's over like that, because you're counting down instead of counting up.
Yeah.
This is mentally, it's it's weird how your brain works sometimes, but it's just, it just goes faster like that. And yeah, like you said, as long as you're just doing it and you're moving forward, because a lot of people are like really confused or really weirded out by like how far my mom is in the game. And it's like, a lot of it comes down to my mom just logs in and just does things, and she just goes and kills things, and she doesn't really care that her rates are really bad, or she doesn't really know what her rates are supposed to be, or half the potions, or she'll go to really shitty maps. But she's always like doing something. And if you spend all your time planning on being the most efficient and waiting for the best moment, and then going really hard, you'll be way more efficient when you're doing something, but you'll be doing way less stuff. And eventually, you won't get as far as someone who's just going, you know?
Yeah.
So sometimes,
exactly.
Yeah, sometimes you just gotta get on with it.
I mean, that kind of ties into what you said earlier as well, right? Just like do the things you enjoy doing, because that's what's gonna net you the most in the end.
Yeah, and this eventually, like, I mean, this game is a marathon, not a sprint, right? And if you play something that you enjoy, you will get further than someone who plays like the best and the strongest class, but only plays it because it's strong. Because one thing that can happen is you can just not fall in love with the character and not feel like logging in a lot of times and really have to go against you, which is bad for your mental. And the second thing that can happen is if you play a class that's really, really strong because it's OP, it might get nerfed. And then that's going to be even worse for you because the only reason you were playing the character is because it was strong. And if it loses that, you have nothing left. Whereas if you play a character because it's fun and it gets nerfed, it's still fun for you. If it gets buffed, it's double fun for you. So like you never lose there. It's a win-win situation if you play what you like.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's make sure we keep moving through things because we're already half an hour in. I mean, it's fun chatting about everything, but let's make sure that we help you with everything. But when it comes to like WSE and weapons and what to pick there and attack speed and that's all, and interoperability, that's all clear, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good because that's a really like a good foundation and a lot of that's important stuff for Paladin. So as long as we got that cleared up, that's good. Did you have like a list of questions of things you definitely wanted to get through to make sure that we address those, and then we can move on to like equips and general progress from there?
Well, yeah, I have like three more questions, and one is about like the V matrix and how that works.
Yeah.
Because I'm like kind of confused as to, like, I kind of know what things or like the nodes you should get. Like I just Googled the best nodes, right?
Yep.
But I'm not like entirely sure if you need like that exact node that is like the best node, and you want two of them, and Sean,
or mixing,
and do it like that,
or if you can mix around,
or just mix like so you get. Well, for me, I think it's like four or five skills or something. No, 3 skills maybe. And then like just play around with them so I get all the skills twice, right?
Yeah. So the main thing when it comes to boost nodes is that you a lot of times for most classes, but this is going to be class to class, but a lot of times there's just one set of nodes, so one set of 3 skills that's really important, and the ideal is to find 2 nodes with the configuration of those 3 at least, and then level those 2 up, and that's where like a lot of your character's final damage is going to come from, and that's just going to elevate your character a lot. And then a lot of times the second set of tri-nodes is more like a min-maxing one when it comes to mobbing, just to make sure that you get a little bit more damage when you're mobbing, because by that time you'll be such a high level that you'll have so many slots available that it would be a waste not to level up your boosting or boost up your leveling skills, your mobbing skills, because you'll just end up being able to mob more easily, and you won't have to upgrade your gear as much to keep like one-shotting monsters. Or you'll be able to go to higher level areas more easily that have a higher arcane power requirement, because your arcane power bonus damage will go down, right? Because the base amount of the arcane power goes up a lot, and it's going to be hard to maintain that plus 50% if you keep leveling at a steady pace. For example, like if you get to a Sphera, the base arcane power needed for the monsters there is 600. So if you want to get that plus 50%, you need 900. Which is really difficult to do if you're just getting 235 and you're getting there, right? So because you're losing that final damage on the arcane power, but if you have enough final damage that catches up on the boost nodes instead, and once you're 235, you have a lot more slots available, then those extra boost nodes will help you maintain your kill speed. So the main important thing is that you always see like, okay, which skills are in those tri-nodes, why are they there, try to understand why they're there and what their function is. And then ideally, you have the ideal world in your case is that you have in total 4 boost nodes. 2 of them have Blast and then Divine Judgment, Divine Mark, Divine Charge in any combination, and then 2 have Heaven's Hammer, Smite, Final Attack in any combination. The reason that Final Attack is in there is because it adds a little bit, but it's not very necessary for Paladin, because you don't do a whole lot of. I think it only triggers on blast attacks, and your general attack speed is not super high, and blast isn't that insane of a part of your damage in the sense of you don't do a lot of blast attacks. So the final attack cannot really trigger that much. So it's more of a min-max just to fill the boost node with, just to make sure that line does anything rather than nothing. Right? That's a little bit of a min-maxy line. But when you're bossing, whether your Heaven's Hammer and your Smite is is boosted is not as important as that the first trio is boosted. So what some people will do is if you have a set of trinodes that's specifically just for bossing, specifically just for mobbing, then you might just switch those out so you can have maximum amount of slots available for skill nodes instead. And if you really just use all of your skills all the time, like as an Adele, for example, like they're always used for mobbing and always used for bossing, then you can basically freely mix and match between all 6 of the skills, because it doesn't really matter. You're going to basically always lock in 4 boost node slots, so it doesn't matter which one is where. And that way you can get your trinodes way easier, right? Because you have way more combinations that are good. So it comes down to specifically for your class. So what the way I understand it is that it's really just the first one that's really important, and the second one is just for mobbing, just to, you know, to kind of like future proof. So you have, do you have that first trinode? Is that what you have? Because I'm kind of unfamiliar with the icons of the skills.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Let me check. Yeah, it's Divine Charge, Blast, and Divine Judgment / Divine Mark.
And then the other one is Final Attack, Hammer, and then Divine Mark again, or Divine Blast?
No, Divine Charge.
Divine
so it's
Charge.
not like the best one, but it just was something put in.
Yeah.
Because I was pretty like unsure of whether to like, because previously I've just disassembled like everything that wasn't like the perfect ones, and then I was like sitting there and like, okay, now I'm a new level and I have 0 nodes.
Yeah.
Like what do I do now?
Yeah. So you want to look at like those trinodes, right? And you want to see which ones you eventually need. And to keep your options open as much as possible, you want to save all the nodes that start with any of those 6 skills. And the ones that don't start with any of those 6, those you can disassemble. Because they can never be the ones that you equip, but they could also never be the ones that you use to level up other ones, because it has to start with the same skill as the one that you want to level up.
Yeah.
So as long as it doesn't start with those 6, you can get rid of it. There's also some skill nodes that you can always get rid of. I see you don't have them, so that's good. Like Decent Hyper Body, Decent Mystic Door, right? Those don't do anything for you. You can always just extract those and then get those free points. And if you are using Auto Buff, are you using that?
Yeah, I'm doing it for the Decent Sharp Eyes and the... what's the other one?
Speed Infusion or Holy Symbol?
Yeah, exactly.
As long as you're keeping Auto Buff on, you can also extract extras for those decent skills, because they'll have 100% uptime with your pet anyway. So there's no point in leveling them. The only one there's a point in leveling is Decent Holy Symbol, because the amount of experience and the amount of drop rate that you get from that one goes up as you level it. So that one has value for leveling, but the other ones, you can just get rid of the extras.
And then, like, I never really got the fact that, like you can enhance the node, and you can, like, by disassembling nodes into it, basically. Or not disassembling it, but, like...
Yeah, they're, like, fusing, basically,
Yeah, to fuse them. But then you can also, like, upgrade the slot, right? Like, slot enhancement.
Yeah, the matrix slot itself,
Yeah, because that just... What does that do?
Well, if you hover over the node in an enhanced slot, it'll show you what the what the current level is. So you can go past the level. So this is why we need 2 trinodes for every, why we want 2 trinodes for every skill, is because the total amount of levels you can boost one skill is 60 times. But a node can only go up to 25. So if you would just have 2 25 nodes, you only have 50. You're still 10 short. You would need a 3rd node to max it out. But what you can do is put it in a level 5 slot, and then it goes from 25 to 30 when it is in that slot, and then you put both of them, 2 times 30 is 60, and then you max it out, basically. And that's why all the skill nodes scale all the way up to level 30, even though you can only max the node up to 25, because you can put a level 25 node in a level 5 slot, and then it goes up to 30. So if you hover over the skill, it'll show in yellow letters what the actual level is. So you can see on the bottom left, it says level 30, even though it's a level 25 skill node. It says level 30, and in yellow it says level 5 enhancement effect is active. You see that?
Yeah.
So if I would put level
Okay.
3 node in there instead, it would say level 8 now, and level 5 set effect is active.
Okay. That makes sense. That's like super confusing for no reason whatsoever. But all right, that makes sense now.
Yeah, and so what you can't do is put a skill in it and then activate it and then switch it out, because then you would get the level 5 effect multiple times, right? So that's why sometimes if you try to move a skill, it says like you can't do it because it's still on cooldown. That's kind of to protect people from min-maxing and trying to use one level 5 slot for all their skills or something. Which, you know, I don't know how you would do that during a boss fight, but I guess they have a safety for that. So then if you press the regular skill tab and you look at the V matrix, you will see all the ones that are enhanced, and they will have like a plus on the behind it, right? So you see this is on as level 4, but it's +3, so it's effectively... I believe it's... oh no, that's not added. Yeah, that's added. So it's a 4, but that's because of the +3. So you'll see for the skill nodes that are maxed, it'll, for me at least, I go to 30, and that's because +5 is active. And then you'll see for the boost nodes, it's at 60 because +10 is active. And then sometimes what people might do is they might even put a node in like 3 or 4 or 5 slots, and you could see something like +15 or +20 here even. But that's mostly for characters who don't really need a lot of skill nodes. Like, let's say that you only need 1 or 2 skill nodes to mob, and everything else is free. You could take like 5 level 3 nodes or something, which is very cheap, but put them all in level 5 slots. So then you get 3 +5 times 5. Now you have 40, right? Now you suddenly have +80% final damage with very shitty nodes. But as long as you put like 1 or 2 skill nodes in that, you can like scale up like that. Which in your case, I guess like well, you get a lot of final damage from that last skill, right? But if you want to make it so that you don't have like temporary damage boost, but you have permanent damage boost, you could go really hard on whichever skill when you're mobbing gives you the most extra damage. Is that would that be the charge for you? My Paladin mobbing is a long time ago.
I feel like it's the like hammer that spins around.
Yeah, that might be more
the Buccaneer thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you might be in a situation actually where your boost nodes are mostly for your bossing damage, and if you want to increase your mobbing damage more, you actually want the hammers to do more, because that's 50% uptime on the full swing, right?
Oh yeah.
So that might be the case actually, that if you want those more to kill actually, so you need to emphasize a little bit more skill nodes early on rather than boost nodes. That's possible. Which is, you know, a little bit counterintuitive, but Buccaneers will do that as well. Yeah, they'll have boost nodes at like level 8, but then they'll have their Lord of the Deep at like level 20 or something, just to make sure they can keep trading. And then for your bossing, it's a lot of... it's very important that you just stay really close to the boss, especially when you're bursting, which of course for them is a little bit risky, but for you is way less risky because you can just tank a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah, and just be unkillable for 30 seconds.
Yeah, that also helps quite a bit.
Yeah.
Just be like, come at me, bro. Everything goes... bullets bounce off me. Yeah. Well, so you know which boost nodes to look for. And when it comes to leveling, if you find nodes that aren't perfect, but they're like 2 out of 3, and you have slots available in your matrix, you can also put 2 out of 3 nodes in there and start leveling them, as long as the top skill, so the one that shows up here in the bottom left, right, the one that's mentioned first in picture the node, as long as that one is the top skill, you can equip it and you can start working on it if it's 2 out of 3. If you ever find your tri-node later, you can always use that skill to level up the tri-node, and all of the experience will get transferred over.
All right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you could just use it as a boost node on the other node and just keep going, basically. The reason I say that you want the top node to be a good one, because if it ends up not being a good one, you have to disassemble it, and then you lose a lot of the efficiency when you disassemble, but not when you transfer over. So that has the clear preference there.
Yeah. That makes sense. Like, it's a super complicated system. Like, for me, I think it's like super hard to like wrap your head around how everything works together. But yeah, it became a bit more clear now.
Is there anything that you're still, because you said a bit more clear? I mean, we can talk about it a little bit more if there's more questions that you have right now. Like how far you level, or
no? I think I will just like watch rewatch this because it's like so much information now, right?
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
So it's just rewatch it because you're gonna upload it to YouTube, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Then it's fine. like all the information is in here. So
Yeah, it's just not in your head yet, but it's in here.
yeah, it's slowly. It just needs time to sink, as we say in Sweden.
Yeah, it needs to sink in. Yeah. Okay. And what? You had 2 more questions?
Yep. So something. Yeah, here about like I have the Commerci, like I did a screenshot of the like Commerci picture that you have. I think it's under the Commerci command. Not sure. Yeah, so we're gonna see here. Yeah, something about like residue. Use residue on small voyages. What is that? Like, I only have the soap.
Oh, okay, that might be. I don't know. It just means like the residue, like the leftover energy. I mean.
Oh.
Because when you do the really big voyages, it's possible you're left with like 5 or 10 or 15 energy or something, but you can't really do any big voyages anymore. If you then leave, then there's like a little bit of EXP you miss every day, right?
Oh,
but
okay,
if you,
okay.
Sorry,
okay,
that's what
well,
I mean with that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So that.
Yeah, it's
that
just
was
maybe a
one,
weird word to use now that you mention it. Yeah.
Yeah. I just thought like, how the fuck do I get residues? Like, I have done something wrong now, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I see.
Okay,
I see.
so it's that, and then the like arcane symbols. Because now I'm 221. My symbols are you see them there over the ship.
Yeah.
And like, when do they max out? And is it like always relevant to do the dailies?
They max out at level 20, and yes, it's always worth it.
Okay, and then how does that work? Because I've seen that you get like new ones later when you get to like 225 and like up to like
225, 230, and 235. So every 5 levels after 220 you get one.
Yeah, okay. And then how does that work if you only can equip 3?
No, you'll get extra slots. So it'll look like this.
Oh.
It'll just open up underneath. And then once you get to 260, you get these as well. And then one is at 260, this one will be at level 270, and then there's the new one coming out at level 275. And then the whole thing starts again, and these go up to level 11. But yeah, you can see, well, it's a little bit weird because it's my main stat, but if you have them all maxed out, you'll get 13.2k strength just from the symbols.
Yeah.
So that's 1.5 times your current stat is going to come from symbols alone, if they're maxed.
Yeah.
And it is worth it, because the arcane power, a lot of the later bosses will be arcane power bosses. So you will need the arcane power to deal your final damage to them as well. Like to Lucid and to Will and to Varishilla and all those bosses, Yeah, always worth it.
And then like the last question I had kind of links with the like attack speed thing in the beginning, and that's basically like one-hand mace or one-hand sword.
Yeah, sword and mace difference is if you want to job change, basically. Because if you switch to a hero, you can't use a mace. You have to use a sword or an axe. Because open job advancement exists, that's when sword, I would say, is relevant as an option. If you're not sure if you want to stay Paladin forever or if you want to switch, because then you save a whole lot of money. And then, in fact, the cheapest would be to always stay one-handed and shield, because then you can always just wear the shield as well. If you go secondary, you have to remake your secondary as well.
Yeah, exactly. Because I was thinking about that. Like right now, I don't really feel like I would do that. But then again, this is my first character, and I've been playing for 3 weeks, and maybe in like
who knows,
6 months or 1 year or something. Like but then it's like it's only the difference of either the 1% crit or the 10% IED, right? With the bonus you get as a paladin.
Yeah, there's a little bit of ID and a little bit of crit. The further you get in the game, though, that little bit of crit and a little bit of IED, you definitely build around it when you have it. But if you do ever end up switching with that stuff, it basically just comes down to moving maybe a link skill, but probably moving like where the pieces in your Legion grid are at that point. Because at that point, you'll have like 4k, 5k Legion, and you'll have a little bit of flexibility there. and those stats that are more rigid, like the bonuses from your weapon or the stat bonuses, the potentials on your weapon, secondary, and emblem, those are way harder to change around, right? But the more flexible stats, like your Legion Grid and maybe your hyper stats, those will just be moving around the other stats to make sure that you optimize roughly within the progression numbers, right? To make sure that your damage is somewhat optimized. Yeah.
That was basically like all the questions I had. Yeah.
Okay. I'll just look through the screenshots now then and just see if I see anything that pops out at me, and then we'll just take that like one topic at a time, and then we'll end up with checking out the equips and make sure that you have a good idea of like where to move forward. And yeah, and then you can ask any remaining questions after that. Okay, so if I look at your stat window here, this is your mobbing setup, right, for hyperstats. And you're working a little bit on charm, so you get your pocket item out. You see you're working on ambition, that's leveling quite nicely, so you're doing quite a bit of bosses, that's good. Your inner ability, I think, is really good for this point. It doesn't mean that you want to, like, it allows you to go one-handed and get max attack speed, so we talked about that. Your ID, it doesn't really matter when you're mobbing, so that's also like whatever. But the one thing that I did mention way in the beginning, right, you want to keep in mind is that you do have that armor break that gives you 50% ID extra, which basically means that you can add half of however much. Do you know about IED and how the calculation goes?
Not how the calculation goes. Just basically that the more you have, the better it is.
To an extent, right? So you've played other video games, you know what like armor penetration means, right? Yeah, so ID is armor pen, basically. So it depends on how much armor the boss has, and it depends on how many sources of ID you have access to. That kind of determines what is the sweet spot to be in. You know that if you have 100 armor pen, you do the most damage, but it also means that you probably go get armor pen at the expense of other sources of damage, which means your actual damage output could be lower at 100% than at like 95%, right?
Yeah.
And it gets diminishing returns because if you add a source of IED, it always gives you that percent of how much you're missing to get to 100%. So let's say you're at 80% and you add 20%, then you add 20% of the missing 20% between 80 and 100%. So 20% of 20% is 4. So then you go from 80 to 84. But let's say that you're at 95% and you add 20%, then you get 20% of the 5% you're missing, which is 1%, and then you go from 95 to 96. So it still gives you more damage, but the further you go, the more you have to think about, do I really need this line, or is something else going to be more efficient? When you're at very low levels, it's very efficient to go for IED, or very low amounts of IED, I mean. It's very efficient to go for IED because of the armor. So the armor of the bosses, and that's calculated as well into the dailies, and into the progression, like how high do you want to be on IED. This is a combination of which sources do you have access to, how much damage do the other sources give you, and how much armor do the bosses have at this point. And a rough estimate, basically, if you're looking here, is that the bosses before, the early game bosses basically go up to like 100% armor, right? So just what you see is what you get. If you have 80 IED, they have 100 armor, you ignore 80% of their damage, 20% of their armor is, 20% is left, so you get 20% final damage reduction. So 80% of your damage goes through. Once you get into the mid game, it goes up quite a bit. It goes up to 100, 150%, even up to 250% on the highest ones here. And then late game is basically all 300%, and then end game goes higher up to 330 and 380%, I think. So to give you an example, if you have 80% IED and you have 100% armor boss, you do 80% of your damage, right? If you have 80% IED and you have a 300% armor boss, you only do 40% of your damage, right? Because you get the 20% damage reduction 3 times instead of 1 time, because it's 300% armor, right? You ignore 80% of 300, 240, 60 is left, so you do 40% of your damage. And 40% of your final damage versus 80% is your damage gets cut in half, even though you have the same IED, right? So at that point, you can see it's important to keep increasing your IED, because with what I mentioned before, basically what it means is that the efficiency of all the upgrades you're making, your upgrades are all still going to be exactly the same cost, but they're only going to give you half as much damage. So you owe it to all of your other upgrades to make sure that your IED is in a good position. Otherwise, all of the other upgrades are just inefficient. So that's why it's important to look at that, but it's important to know that you have that armor break, that 50%, that always gives you half of whatever you're missing visually, to know that you're not going to go over on the IED. You don't want to overcommit on some other IED because your visual number is low. Because as a Paladin, your visual is always going to be low, right? So if you want to aim for 95%, that means, which is like, you know, for late game all the way, right? That means that visually you're okay if you're at 90, right? Because half of that, 5% of the 10%, half of that is going to go up to 95 anyway, all the time, because you can always have that debuff on a boss. And then on top of that, you'll have your boost nodes have some IED, some of your skills might have built-in IED. You'll have the Explore Mage Link skill by that point that gives you some IED on a debuff on the boss. So as long as you see 90 visual, you're always going to be cool. So if you can roughly get... for now, if you see like 87 or 88, you're probably also good. And as long as eventually you go towards 90, you're totally fine. And you'll get more sources. So for all of these things, there's even individual commands. Like for IED, you can just check !IED, and it's got the whole explanation, basically what I just did. And then it's got a calculator so that you can see the difference between your visual and your functional. And it's also got a list of the sources of the things that give you IED, so that you know where to get the IED. And these are organized by level of opportunity cost. So basically, the higher they are, the more realistic it is to go for the IED there, because there's not much else you can do in the same slots, basically. And the lower you go, the more it goes at the expense of other sources of damage that you might want instead. So it's a little bit more dicey to get it from there.
Yeah.
The only other thing I see, I mean that your stat is good. It's really good for your level, so that means that your potentials are on point. That's nice. But you're forgetting one big thing in your hyperstats, and that's your critical damage here. Critical damage is basically like final damage on critical hits, except that it's additive instead of multiplicative, so it doesn't scale as well into the higher numbers, but it is very important. If you're hitting a critical hit, your base critical damage is between... I think it's between 40 and 60% extra damage, if I'm not mistaken. If you hover over it, you can see that, right? Oh, between 20 and 50, sorry. So on average, it's 35% final damage extra. It's like a final damage multiplier. So if you... and then it adds the critical damage next to it. So 35 on average. So in your case, 35 plus 28. So what is that, 63? 63% final damage extra on critical hits. So that means that that's relatively low critical damage, so adding some critical damage from other sources is relatively going to increase your damage by a lot. So if you compare that to putting points into strength, into attack power, and maybe even into normal damage and damage, if you take like 1 point out of all of those, you slam that all into critical damage, you're going to see your numbers go up a lot. Again, your detailed stats, your damage range is probably going to go down a little bit, but your actual numbers that you're seeing and your base damage on being able to kill mobs is going to go up a lot. And it's actually a very important stat.
Okay, because like I just know that I saw like somewhere or heard somewhere that like it's pretty pointless to go for maxing that out before you actually have capped like your crit rate, which I only like did yesterday after specking into the like Toba and hair thing.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's why I've been like hesitant to put any points into it.
Yes. Yeah. The critical rate is more important. That's true. That's true. But like. If you're gonna go, and this goes a little bit into the hyperstats, if you're gonna take hyperstats past level 8 and towards level 10, you want to make sure that all of the relevant stats at least have some points into it, because those last 2 points alone is like 65 hyper skill points. And if you put those 65 into getting like 8% damage, versus if you put those in critical damage, you can get 8% critical damage. 8% critical damage is always going to be way more than 8% damage. Pretty much always, just because of the access to the amount of percentages that we have in the game. Most of your critical damage, where it's going to come from, and again, you can have exclamation mark crit, most of where it comes from is your is going to be potential wise is going to be your gloves if you get that, a little bit from decent sharp eyes that you already have, and then it's going to come from guild skills, right, which you might not have access to, or you have access to now.
No, my guildmaster respect like from the like use skills to the passive skills, maxing that out. That's why I have spec so much into like the arcane power one as well, because I had like 200 something arcane power, and then I logged in and I was like, oh shit, I'm at like 320 now.
So you're talking about these here? Are you guys, what level is is your guild?
Like 20, 25.
Okay. But you can have both of these, right? So these you get from being leveled, and then these you get from the contribution for the week. So if the people in the guild didn't do enough culvert, flag race, or contribution, which is here, if you don't get a lot of points here, then you don't get enough skill points and you can't level these up. So if you're losing points here, it means that people need to do more flag race, more culvert runs for more damage. So you get into a higher rank here, right? If you get a higher rank, you get more skill points. And then do more contribution here to fill up this bar for the skill points here. If they are, if you're dropping on that, because you could get both, right? This is from a different source of points than this, and these have, if these are maxed.
Oh yeah, now we have them again.
It's possible that yesterday on Monday they just didn't put the points in yet, and then you'll see here skill points available. If they're all still on 0, that just means that a leader or someone who can level up the skills hasn't logged in yet and hasn't leveled them up yet. It's possible.
Oh yeah. Then it was probably
because it was Monday. Yeah, they probably just did a little bit later in the day. Yeah. But yeah, this is a lot of critical damage, and then the other source is just your Legion grid itself, right? Because Legion grid is 0.5%, and so that goes up to 20% if you fill in the Legion grid completely, and then your hyper stats, and that's pretty much it. There's like a few 1% here and there that you can do. But that's it. So critical damage is a very highly sought after stat. But like you said, definitely after you get your crit rate to 100%. But after that, it's basically everything that gives you final damage, right? So it's like arcane power, that's very important. And then critical rate and critical damage, and then the damages. But those are like going in tandem. So you never want to have like critical damage at 0, but damage and normal monster damage at 10. That's too big of a difference. You can have like 8 and 9 or 8 and 10 or something, but never 0 and 10. You'd always rather have like 7, 7, 7, for example. That'll always be more efficient.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Other than that, this looks good. You're now at the point, and this goes a little bit into the equip part, but you're now at the point where at this level, you want to get a good idea of if this is the character that you want to keep going for longer term, right? If you want to get into the 240s, into the 250s maybe, and go towards like lucid will, hard will. Is that something that do you feel good about this character when you're logging in, like you're enjoying it a lot?
Yeah.
Okay.
For sure. Mm-hmm. But then again, like my approach now, because I don't really know yet, because like I haven't tried like any other classes.
Yeah. I feel that. Yeah. Then there's too many to say that you could like it the best. Yeah.
Yeah, because there's so many fucking classes in this game, man. Mm-hmm. So many classes. Mm-hmm. Like it's just insane.
Yep.
So, kinda, my current approach is kinda like just doing my dailies like as little as possible, basically, and then just like focusing on after that, just getting all my like link skills that I want up to first level 70, and then like slowly progress them up to level 100, and yeah.
And then kill a bunch of Zakums for easy EXP and cheap. Cheap levels. Yeah. The best part about that is that you don't have to upgrade your equips at all, so you have to invest no extra money there and get free levels for it, so that's nice. Well, the reason I'm saying it is because not just for your character itself, but also for progressing your account, is that at this point you want to start, and you already talked about it a little bit, right, trying to upgrade your greed pendant, right? At this point you want to start working, because your weapon secondary emblem is good, you're working towards the Fafnir weapon. Like the Fafnir weapon is definitely going to take up some resources, but past that, the next thing you mainly want to be working on is getting your drop and your meso gear up, so that you can have more drop rate, so that every monster always drops a bag, and that your meso obtain can make sure that there's more money inside all of the bags. And that way you can make sure that your character will be set when upgrades need to be made, but also if you eventually don't want to continue this character, that as long as you keep leveling, you'll be able to make money with this character to fund whatever next character is coming, and then you can speed up the process of all the phases that you went through on the Paladin on the other characters, so that character can more smoothly catch up to the Paladin and surpass it.
Yeah.
So that's going to be the next step, and that Mesoptane inner-ability is important for that. And I saw that you had a increased item drop rate. Familiar? Which is a good foundation for that as well.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that a little bit because I saw you had 2 familiars on, but only one of those will be adding stats for you. But we'll get to that. So see, you're working on the critical rate and the ignore defense. So again, like I always say this during all the sessions, critical rate and ignore defense are probably the most important stats in the entire game. So at least you got your priorities there, so that's good. We've got, I don't know who this is, sneak peeking in. Like, he's peeking behind the hyperstats. So
the Tobin dude, yeah.
So your hyperstats here in for the bossing, way better distribution, right? You got 10, you got 8 on everything. You make sure that you got your crit rate. Everything is on 8. You're not doing bosses with arcane power yet, so that's not important. This is really good hyperstat distribution. This is pretty much perfect, so I can't really say anything about that.
Nice.
As far as I know, these are the hyper skills that you want. So I don't know if you looked that up or if that was all off the dome, but I'm pretty sure that's exactly what you want there as well. So that looks good. This looks very good. This looks like you're understanding like the fundamentals very well, or you got super lucky. But one of the two. Yeah, I assume maybe a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. But yeah, this is really good. So what's your plans from here on out with the hyperstats and with the Tobin hair? What did you think about doing?
No, I just thought it might be like relevant. I don't know that like my stats show way like it shows way better now with the distribution of everything. Just because of the Tobin event that is like so massively OP.
It's really useful. I mean, it only links to one character, but it does do a lot for you. Yeah. So what do you plan on putting more points in after this for Tobin and for?
I mean, probably like crit rate, and then respec the first the first hyperstat preset, and then I can take away some points there. Probably, because I think like the event is still gonna go on for a couple of weeks, right?
Yeah, well,
it's like 10 million for a.
That's what I'm checking immediately as well. Is like how long is the event going, right? That's the main question. Because are you respecing that for just 1 week? Then maybe it's a little, but it goes all the way until October 4th, so that's still 2 full weeks. And then that means it gives you a little bit more time in those 2 weeks to work on your Legion and Links to get a lot of crit out of that, right? And then once you get the crit there, then when the Link skill or the Tobin skill falls away, you can just throw the other critical rate in there, and then you can keep your hyper stats the way that it is and everything else, and you'll fill in the gaps of the critical rate. That's the idea. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it's mainly like boss damage and normal monster damage, I guess, that will help you out. Or if you're training a lot, maybe a little bit EXP. But yeah, the first thing you want to make sure is that you can.
So little though.
It's so little, yeah. But that's because it's min-maxing on top of already, right? So the first thing that's most important is, can you kill the monsters at all? If you can't, then you definitely want to go for the normal monster damage. But if you are overkilling, if you have more than enough damage, then the EXP per monster becomes really important, right? It's the same thing as with drop rate. It's the same thing as with critical rate and with critical damage. First, you want to make sure you hit a crit, and then once you hit a crit, you want that crit to hit as hard as possible. Or with IED, you want to make sure that your damage goes through to the boss. If it goes through, then you want to make it as hard as possible. Then you want to go into boss damage. Or same thing with meso-obtain. Like first, you want to make sure that all the monsters drop a bag with drop rate, and then when they do, you want to make sure there's as much money in the bags as possible by increasing your meso-obtain. It's always those two things working together, so it's the same system here.
Yeah.
Okay, looks good. With the equips, I want to usually circle back to the equips later. So I see you were saving some of the equips. When it comes to your inventory, what kind of stuff are you like saving up on? What kind of stuff do you maybe have questions on? Like, should I be saving this, or just can I get rid of it? Did I have your picture? Oh yeah.
I think I've done like a pretty decent job at going through, like always like googling stuff that I'm not really sure about. Like the fragments, I have no idea if they're worth keeping or not. Like I found your list that like pretty says that like a bunch of the like CRA bosses, or just doing them normal as well, right?
Oh, you're talking about the soul shards?
The souls.
Yeah. Yeah, normal, like 2 of them are double S tier, right? You can see that in the dailies command and the in the first tab here. It's got the souls. Yeah, it's got S or double S. Yeah, but if you Google it, it's two. So the Vellum and Queen are double S tier, and the other two are S. So those will get you. Those will get you the souls that you want eventually for Absolab and Arcane Weapon. Yeah.
Yeah, because you can just like use this on a pre-existing soul, right? Or do you need to like you only have one per weapon, or
no? You can overwrite the existing one. Yeah, that's no problem. So every now and then there'll be what's called Magnificent Soul event, and then you'll have 5 times the chance for Magnificent Soul, because usually it's only 1% chance, but during that event it's 5%. It's still pretty low, but it's way higher chance. So you typically just always hold on to all your shards until one of those events, and then you just send them all and see if you get some Magnificent.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that checks out.
Yeah.
That's like MapleStory in a nutshell. Just like hoard everything and then just like go ham
and then send.
On the event day.
So for that, you can always check the Sunny Sundays, right? You can check on the Sunny Sundays what's coming up. So like Star Force events are always in here. Sometimes training events, right, where you get extra EXP when training. 2 days ago we had the Monster Bloom. So if you're working on Monster Collection, you can do that. And then next week we have Inner Ability Reset 50% off. So people who are close to the point where they want to work on their inner ability, they can do that. And then October 2nd we have 2 stars instead of 1 if you succeed, only up to 10. So it's a very good event to get stuff up to 12 stars if you're just a new character, or you can get things from 10 to 15 a little bit cheaper, because if you succeed at 10 it goes up to 12 immediately. Or if you have a really big legion like 6, 7, 8k legion and you want to get a lot more legion power from your characters, Star Force is also a factor there. So you can use that to like gather up on equips in the meantime, and then once you have all of those equips, you can set them all to 12 stars for half the cost basically, and that saves you a lot of money and can get you a lot of extra arcane power for the so that your legion coin income goes up.
Yeah, does that work on the like Nova gear and
No, it doesn't. That's what's called superior gear. Yeah, it doesn't work on superior gear, no, because they work in completely different systems. You can't transfer hammer from them. You can't transfer hammer into them. Star Force events don't work on them, just because their prices and their percentages are all completely different. So they're just, in a different league, essentially.
Yeah.
For all the other things, if there's discounts and stuff like that, it'll always show up in the Star Force window, like, oh, it's higher percent instead, or like across through the line of the cost and how much it costs instead. And you'll see if you're doing superior, it'll all look the same as it usually does, and like nothing's going on. So, yeah.
Then, well, I don't really know, like.
Yeah, I don't know if you're holding on to something here in the inventory and you're not sure if you should be holding on to it, or if you're wondering if something else, because it's always, in the beginning it's better to just hold on to more things than you know you need just in case. But then eventually, your inventory starts filling up and you're like, okay, maybe I should start getting rid of some of the extra stuff. Like, you have 3 Mechanator pendants. Is that you can usually just keep... you can keep the Mechanator that has the best flame. And then eventually one of them could become... And you have a Dominator already, that's nice. One of them will become probably Drop or Meso Gear. So as long as you're still in the transition of making certain gear, I would always keep doing the bosses that drop it, just in case a really nice flame drops, and then you can make that your next project. For example, like your Diacitus Earrings are already 71 strength. That, I mean, you're not really going to get a lot of flames that are much better than that, right? So you can start working on that one. But it's still possible that, I know you do like Chaos Horntail or something, or you're always going to do Arc, right? Maybe you get like some crazy like 90 flame score Mechanator or something. That's possible. And then you can be like, okay, now I'm going to start working on this piece, Or on the eye and the face, for example, for Zakum, maybe like the face accessory is just 15 strength. That's not really a solid flame or anything. It's up to epic, but it's only epic, right? So let's say that you still kill Zakum and Czak weekly, and and then you get like a condensed power crystal with like, I don't know, like 40 and 3 or something. It's like, oh wow, that's way better. Now this one is going to be the one that I invest in, right? As long as you're still doing just one piece at a time and one project up to drop in meso gear, and it takes a while, as long as you're still in that process, make sure you keep doing those daily so you can maybe get a nice flame and you don't have to spend any money on flames later if you're trying to min-max on the pieces that you've already upgraded. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, same thing with like Pink Bean, right?
Like,
Like the cup is nice that it fills a slot, but the flame is not that good. So hopefully you can still
exactly.
do that boss and then get a way better flame.
I do it every day.
Yeah, and you can just replace it, exactly.
But it's kind of like I'm so like I don't really know how good like things are, because it's like I have one Mechanator pendant that is like 79 strength, which is like a super good flame, right?
Yeah.
Then I also have like a Mechanator pendant that is 4% all stat, and then the Dominator is 4% all stat, but no, like it doesn't have
any flat strength.
What's it called? No strength, and then it doesn't have any potential either. So I'm like, do I like reflame this? Because I don't really know. Like, from what I've gathered, it's like you do flaming like last, like get everything 15 stars and then like worry about flames, right? Or something like that.
Yeah, so the Mechanator it basically is just like what you see is what you get. So if you get a good flame, you can send it, and you can have like a really nice extra little bit of power. So the same way that we looked at the weapon and the secondary and the emblem as like basically we want the right amount of like attack, stat, IED, boss damage, right? In the combination, where you get it doesn't really matter that much as long as you have the like a good amount of all of those stats to make sure that you can kill monsters and kill bosses. In the same way, at this point, you want to start looking at your accessories, that basically all of your accessories together, you want to get to make sure that all of the bosses, all of the monsters drop a bag of money, that there's as much money in them as possible, and then that the whole combination of all of your accessories gives as much damage as it can without really spending a whole lot of money on it. So if you can get all of them with like an 80 flame score or like a 70 to 80 flame score, and it's like not well, how many accessories can get potential? Is it 1, 2, 3, kind of 4, 5, I guess, right? Because not the rings. Yeah, if those 5 can get like a flame score of like not potential, sorry, I meant flame score of like 70, that's like 350 stat that you're getting. And if all of them can get like a line of 6% or 9% stat on top of the drop in Meso, that will all add up, and that'll give you a nice cushion that you don't need to min-max on everything else as much, you know, and I give you a little bit more time before your Legion starts like really popping off. But if all of them have bad flame score and none of them have any stat, that's going to be really bad. So you don't necessarily need to aim for like everything needs to be like Meso obtain and 2 lines of strength and 85 flame score, right? That's not necessary. But if they all have nothing, that might get you into trouble. So as long as you have pieces like this with good stats, you can move on to the next one. The Dominator is a little bit different in the sense that you can use it early on as a drop or meso piece, but if you're saying like I'm going Mechanator and I'm going like Greed Pendant, that's a fine combination. That'll be enough damage. Because the Dominator, eventually you'll want to work on transposing that and making that 16 stars and a really nice flame, and that'll be a later process. Like you said, you don't want to be spending a whole lot of money on flaming. Maybe on your weapon, right? Fuffing your weapon maybe, and then Absolab weapon, you want to spend some money flaming there because of how the flame scores work and how efficient that is. But eventually, you'll get to the point where, like, you know, you're getting stuff up to 15 stars, you got your drop on your Meso gear ready, you're waiting for a 5, 10, 15 event, getting everything to 17, working on legendary potential, and then you're moving into, like, the Superior Golok set, you know, like you're at, like, 240-ish, like, early 240s, and then the Mechanator Pendant, the Dominator Pendant, up to 16 stars, really good flame score, 105 or higher, and then transpose that into the Sweetwater Pendant. By then you have enough Dineros, right? You've worked on the tattoo and everything like that, and then you really have the combination of drop and meso gear on one side, and then complete full damage gear on the other side. So on one end you'll have mostly drop and meso gear will mostly be everything that you already have right now. It'll be like the boss accessories and stuff like that with like decent flames, and maybe a little bit of stat potential here, but it'll be good enough to kill monsters because your boost nodes will be stronger, your arcane power will be higher, you'll have Absolab gear, you'll have stronger CRA gear, so you'll be able to kill the monsters in your level very easily. And on the other side you'll have Superior Golok stuff, Sweetwater stuff, and those will have mostly high star force and high potential, and that's where their damage will come from. And then set bonuses where it's possible. and those sets will be separate. And that's when the Dominator really gets to shine for that transposing into the Sweetwater, and you get a really nice pendant there. So you can invest early on into the Dominator and work on the flames, but it's not necessary this early on.
Yeah. But then, keeping it because it has like a super good flame right now is more than enough, then, right?
What you said, it only had 4% Ulstat, right?
Yeah, the Dominator.
Yeah, the Dominator. Yeah. So like, this comes down to like flame score and everything. Are you familiar with that a little bit?
Yeah, like a little bit. I think like the sheet you have is like pretty clear on what it is, like the calculator thing, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not like sure because it had.
You talk about this, right?
Like 4. Wait, let me. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then you can check with this to see what number you're looking for. So we could see, right? Like, so you're looking for a let's say you have the Mechanator with like 79, so we're looking for flame score on advantaged. That one you just have to kind of know. And you had 79 strength, and what else did it have? Strength classes, late game. Maybe it has some dex or something. Probably no Allstat.
No,
be
just int and... or no, you're talking about the Mechanator now.
Yeah,
not the Dominator.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the Mechanator is just 79 strength. And like 24 dex.
That's also your secondary stat, right? So that gives you a little bit of extra damage as well.
Yeah.
So that would be flame score of 82. So if you look at, and that's for drop rate gear, right? That's actually already really close to where you would want like your CRA flame to be at the like if you're approaching 240. And the CRA is level 150, and the Mechanator is, what is it, 120?
Yeah. Wait,
130? Something like that, right?
Yeah, 120.
120, yeah. So then you see comparatively that's really nice where you're at, right? It's already future-proofed for being able to be your drop rate gear forever, basically.
Yeah.
So that's how you can look at a flame and see, you know, does it need any work, or is this like really good? And that goes into what I was talking about. Like if you're moving into making them drop in meso gear, when you find something of a flame that's good, you could be like, okay, that's cool. Now I don't need to do like Horntail every day anymore to get like, see if I can get a better Diacetus earring. I can move on to other content and maybe train a little bit more. Maybe work on Legion and Lynx a little bit more. Because the efficiency of doing that boss is going to go down now. The experience on Horntail isn't really efficient anymore. I don't need the earring for a better flame anymore. I can get a Chaos Horntail necklace, but I don't want to have like 5 necklaces, right? You already have Green Pendant, Horntail necklace, Mechanator, and a Dominator. Like, you're good on pendants, right? You don't need any more there.
Yeah.
And the flames are not flame advantaged on the Horntail necklaces, as you can see. It's only 2 lines here, and they're pretty low. So there's a big difference between this potential and this potential. And you see for Superior as well, that's also not flame advantaged. These numbers are depressing for level 150 items. Because if you compare like Superior, to like Tyrant, you see these numbers, like, oh, okay, this is a different area, right? See the Amaterasu glove, 1 line, only 3 Allstat. That's no advantage either.
Yeah.
Nova, also no advantage. CRA, you see those numbers, be like, oh, okay, this is some different shit. This is a different league.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be. But yeah, in terms of backups, let's see, go back. Yeah, so for transferring capes, you could do probably do like a Enraged Zakum cape or something, right, into Absolab. So if you have 1 epic and you transfer that when you get one of those capes and you make that 1 epic, then you have a baseline epic, and then if it ever blows up, the trace will always stay epic. So as long as you have 1 epic, that's good. If you have multiple, it'll just take up a little bit more room. Unless your idea is, I'm going to do a lot of Pencilier capes and get higher on the Pencilier cape and then transfer into 1 Zakum cape and then do the Zakum cape up to 16, right, during a 5, 10, 15 event, and then transfer that into the Abzo. You could do that as well, but I think that costs you a little bit extra money to do it that way. If you do multiple transfers like that.
Yeah, like with the capes now, like all of the capes there are epic potential. That is just like regular drops, no cubing involved at all. So I was like, yeah, this is probably like a free free potential scroll, basically, is my thinking.
Yep, that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the only reason I keep them, basically.
Mm-hmm. But if you have multiple, I'm just saying, like, in terms of like how many you need, you will probably only need one, because if you like, the goal is to transfer from level 150 capes into an Abzo without having to safeguard the Abzo, right? That's the goal of holding on to it. So eventually you'll get multiple Enraged Zakum capes from killing Czak, and you don't want to hold on to like 8 Pencilier capes and like 8 Zakum capes, because then your whole inventory is going to be completely full if you do that with everything, right? If you hold on to reinforced belts and to pink bean belts and reinforced earrings, and your entire inventory is going to be completely full. So if your purpose of the cape is to get an epic potential to Absolab, which is good, that's good reasoning, that's what they're there for, all you need is one epic cape to transfer into, with at least 1 star, transfer into an Enraged Zakum cape, and then once that one is epic, the epic is guaranteed to go to Absolab, because even if it blows up and it becomes a trace, you can just transfer the trace into another Enraged Zakum cape and it'll keep the potential. So you'll only need one ever.
Okay.
Yeah. So you don't need multiple of that same function. Now, if there was there could be multiple reasons to need multiple, right? Like, for example, if you have, I don't know, Kana treasure rings or something, and you have like 3 epic ones, you could do 1 Kana treasure ring by itself. You could do a Kana treasure ring and transfer it into Superior, and you could do a Kana treasure transfer into Superior and then transfer it into the Slime ring, for example. Like, there's multiple paths there, so then you could need multiple. But for this one, you only need 1.
Okay. That makes sense, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that's something for like inventory stuff that I know, like your previous question, things that I just like don't know what they do, basically. Like, I think I know, but it's like the what is it called? Like the diffusion energy core and the bent stigma spirit stone.
Yeah.
Like, I know they're important to do, but I don't really know how to like make them into the gear later. I guess that's just killing the bosses, right?
Yeah, so for every 20 pieces, you'll need 1 upgraded boss piece that drops straight up from the boss from normal and hard difficulty, and that'll turn them into the coins, and then with those coins you can buy the items from the shop. Let's see what so this is what the boss drops look like. So the Twisted Stigma Spirit Stone from Damien, and the Extraordinary Energy Core Grade S from Lotus. I think on easy you'll get, I don't know if you can get 0, but I think it's 1 or 2 drop, and then from hard it's pretty much always, it's at least 2, but most of the time 3, and then I think 4 can even drop if you have a lot of drop rate. But of course the hard bosses will be very far away for you, because that's they're pretty chunky. But yeah, this is, so those clears together with 20 drops is 1 coin, and then you can buy item from that shop, 2 coins for the armors and 5 for the weapon. But it's a good amount already.
But then like my another question I would have then is like, when can I start doing those on like normal, you think?
So typically when you get to the point where CRA becomes really easy, like you go into C-Val and you basically know there's like 0% that you fail, and you kill it in just like a few minutes, basically, maybe in like 2 or 3 bursts. If you get a group of people that's on that same level together, then you can definitely start doing normal Lotus and Damien. Basically, you'll be getting to the next bosses, right? So if you check the and that's how the dailies, where is it here, is set up as well. As long as your level keeps tracking how strong you are, then you can start getting to that content. So right now you can kind of look down the list, and maybe it'll be like exactly 1-to-1, but like you've done Hard Hilla, right? Princess No, Chaos Vellum, like you're around that part.
Well, I've done Hilla with like a friend. Princess No, I've never done because no one wants to do it.
Yeah, the pre-quests are a little bit rough.
Yeah, I've tried soloing it. It was just like horrible experience. I was like, nah, this is gonna take like half an hour. Can't be bothered.
Yeah, so with the main problem is the monsters in the beginning, they just take normal damage, so you don't really need to be really buffed. What you need to do is you need to put all the buffs on that do a lot of extra lines of damage. That's going to be the most important. So you want to scale up to as many lines of damage as possible to get through that boss. And it is kind of a necessary evil, and yeah, if you really don't want to do it, you don't do it, but there's the chance for the kind of treasure rings there, level 140 ring that can Star Force all the way up to 25, and that's very, kind of treasure ring is basically like the Dominator pendant of rings, in the sense of how many applications it has, and how rare it is, and how much damage it can mean for your account for later. And then plus there's also the pieces for the secondary, of course, so that for eventually, once you get your two-handed weapon, that you get your best in slot secondary from there. And it almost, like the boss fight itself at the end will speed up, but you won't really speed up at all compared to like getting a lot stronger, because it really just comes down to how many lines of damage you can do, and you already have the same kit, so you're not really going to be faster. So you can do it with multiple people, but then you'd have to share the pieces at the end and the drops at the end, so that wouldn't be advisable. But you might want to try like some different strategies and some different ways. But yeah, the whale in the beginning, it's not fun. I can really spit it anyway. It's just annoying. Yeah. But yeah, they're just gatekeeping really good gear. So yeah, the sooner you can do it, the faster you can start getting those drops. But yeah, maybe once you have more drop rate or something first, so you can increase the chances of getting the drops, maybe that would be better. And then maybe the runs will feel more valuable if you actually have a chance of getting the drops. So next will be a Hard Magnus. I don't know if you've tried that one already. So you have a cape, right?
Yeah, I've just done it with like in a group, basically. Like all of the bosses, pretty much. Czak.
Yeah, and then Chaos Papulatus, that's probably... So once you feel like Hard Magnus solo is very doable, and of course you can cheat a little bit. And once Chaos Papulatus, once that one becomes pretty doable, like solo Chaos Papulatus, once you can do that, then you can definitely do like 3 or 4 man, like normal Damien, normal Lotus parties. That would be like the next step.
It was like a massive step, but yeah.
Yeah, up until here, the requirements are kind of for solo. And then once you go here, the requirements from basically normal Damien, normal Lotus, and up is like for, yeah, at least like 3-4 man parties, yeah. In the beginning, it's just going to be practice, you know, and trying to survive things and trying to get through things. But then you very quickly go from being able to do it in like a 4-man or a full party to being able to solo it. That's going to move very quickly, especially once you start adding up those Abzo gear, you get those extra levels, access to extra skill nodes. There's a lot of moving parts. Your Legion is going to make big gains in this area between like 220 and 240. Your Legion is going to go from pretty much non-existent probably to like 4K. And that the link skills, member bonus, grid bonus, all added together is going to be a huge amount of stats. So that's gonna scale with you very hard. So that's around the point where, yeah, I would say Lotus and Damien is doable. Oh, you got the +10 here, yeah. Okay, yeah, for the int, of course, yeah. Yeah, you get the Weeping Spirit Sword as the 150. Okay, so you upgrade the 150 already a little bit. And then you notice that it wasn't a damage increase, right?
Yeah.
Compared to Sweetwater.
Well, it was basically just like I had the 11-starred Outguard sword, and I got that one in a drop, and I was like, I don't know when it will be useful to have level 160 two-hander, but I was like, yeah, might as well just transfer it, right?
Yeah, because you can't sell it. Extracting is a waste at that point. Yeah, so you might as well transfer over in case it is valuable. Yeah, that's true. That's true. But I guess you won't be using it since two-handed sword, right?
No. But it's like I didn't really want to sell it either. So it was
yeah. Yeah, I get that. That's very that's very reasonable. That makes sense. Yeah, Links and Legion, you pick up everything that you can, of course, in the beginning. But you know about the Legion grid, right? About the general order that I would advise to make characters in?
I have no idea what I've only been focusing on link skills pretty much.
Okay.
And then what they give in the Legion, no idea. How to build them in the Legion is basically just in one straight line out to the sides, right? One for crit and one for the same way you have done it, right?
Yep. yeah, critical rate up and then critical damage. And then the critical rate up will also allow you to not need every single link skill maybe, or maybe your hyperstat could not be exactly at 10, can go down to like 8. That'll only be 4%, which for crit isn't that much, but that'll be 65 points in the hyper skills, right? And then you can go into those other things like critical damage, which will be easier to, harder to scale up on, or into IED or into boss when you're bossing. And that way you can get a lot of value out of the grid, because you can take a lot of weight off of those higher percentages on the hyperstat and free up a lot of points like that. So the way I have it set up here is that I take the link skills and the legion together as like one clump of this is how much stat it gives to your account, basically. And based on that, I've came up with this order of which stats are like the most important to have all the time, which ones are a little bit situational, which ones are more for bossing, and then which ones are just min-maxing later on just because they're better than nothing, but they're and then this group is the nothing group, basically, where it's like, okay, whatever, they exist, I guess. So based on that, this is the order I came up with, that if you level them up in this way, it'll have the maximal like snowball effect. Like you will impact the next character the best, and then the next character, and then the next character, etc., etc. And once you have like the first 10 or 15 characters done, you'll see a huge, even just up to level 70 or up to level 100, you see a huge difference in just the member bonus of having those characters on your board and access to your link skills. You'll have a really big benefit. Every new character is going to hit way harder and is going to keep one-shotting way longer. So you don't need to put any money into it. It's just going to keep rolling and keep getting those levels up. And then when the levels start rolling up to like 2k, 3k, 4k, 3k is really big. Because 3k, you get to put 5 extra characters on your board, and you get to you expand one more grid to the outside. So then you can really start going into IED, into boss damage if you have enough points for that. And you can really start getting a lot of grid bonus from your legion. So this is the general order I would advise to, like, if you're not sure what to make and you're like kind of lost, you can always just look at this list and see which one's next and just make that one, and you'll always get good value for your account.
Yeah, that makes sense. Makes sense.
And
are they like, and they are in the order of like most importance, right?
Yeah, basically, yeah. So if you go in that order, you'll never go wrong. You'll always have like good value for the next one, and then for the next one. Some of it is a little bit, so if people try to focus very heavily on just one character, it might not be optimal for that one character, but it'll be optimal for building your legion. And if you build your whole legion, it'll be optimal for your character. So it's a little bit of a detour, but eventually it comes back around to giving you the most stats that you need and the most damage increase that you need.
Yeah.
So the last thing here on the familiars that I saw, like 7 crit rate and IED, like that's really nice, right? That's probably as good as you're gonna get, and you probably don't need that much more IED because of the built-in armor break that you have, and you have the line of IED now in your secondary as well, and we got the Tobin hair going on, so your IED is probably fine, right?
Yeah.
So when you are, the one thing with the drop rate is that the largest source of drop rate is going to be what is working when it comes to familiars. So you can't stack multiple sources of drop rate. It's not going to allow that. Otherwise, if you have 3 slots of familiars, it's just going to be way too much. It just would scale so crazy that you get like 600% drop rate or some dumb shit, and it would be really broken. So here under the drop rate command, I put it in the chat, you can see there's some explanation here. So when you're going to be working on your drop and meso gear, it's got the whole explanation here on like the differences between item drop rate, meso obtain, why those stats are different and why it's important to know that. What the maxes are, like what you cap on, what are the lines that you're going to look for on your potential. And also here it has the list of the sources of the familiars, so which line amount means what percentage. And you'll be able to see, because of the information, like if it's item and meso drop rate, if it's split, what it works on, and how big those percentages are. And then you should also see that in your stat window when you summon the familiars, you'll see how much your percentage goes up by. So in general, if you summon familiars and the buffs show up here in the top right, that means that they don't stack with similar buffs of the same type of source. If they don't show up there, they do stack. So for example, healing familiars don't give you a buff. They just do healing. So you can stack as many healing familiars as you want with each other and just like full heal your entire party if everyone does that, and you'll have a really, well, you definitely as a paladin will have a really hard time dying to anything. But when it comes to drop rate and you see it up here, that means that buff is active, so other sources might not stack. So let's give like an example, right? You have the increased item drop rate here, the rare line, I assume, right? So 50%. And you have increased item drop rate by a small amount. So it just looks, okay, those are both trying to do item drop rate. One is 30, one is 50. So the 51 applies, the 30 doesn't. So if you summon those two, you will see one buff on the top right, and you should see your drop rate in your stat window go up by 50%. Which is
okay.
Yeah. Which is a little bit misleading because there's a caveat, and if you read through all of this, you will see, is that the item drop rate when it comes to familiars is specifically separate from meso drop rate. So it increases the drop rate for all items except for meso bags when it comes from familiars. For familiars, it has to specifically mention meso drop rate to increase the chance of bags. So that's why we go for 4 lines of item drop rate here, because these lines of item drop rate as potential on your equips, those do apply to all items. So that includes meso bags. And because the base meso bag drop rate is only 66.67% and is not guaranteed, you want to increase that drop rate to make sure that all the monsters drop a bag, basically. So let's give another example, right? Let's see you get the increased item drop rate by a large amount. And then you summon that one together with your increased item drop rate. Well, now this one is 100%, this one is 50%, so now this one doesn't apply anymore, and you'll see one buff, and that's this one. Now let's say that the next one you get is not this one, but is this one, increases item and meso drop rate by a large amount, so a combination line of 50 or 60%, and then you also summon this one. You'll probably just still see one buff, because both of these are going to be either the same or higher percentage, so this one is going to override. But let's say that you got this one, for example, increases item and meso drop rate by a small amount. Now you will see 2 buffs. And that's because 2 different things are happening. Meso drop rate is increased and item drop rate is increased. For the item drop rate part, this one will pick up because it's 50% and it's higher than the 20%. But for the meso drop rate, this is the only one that does that. So for the meso drop rate, the 20% will pick up. So then you will see 2 buffs. But one of those will only be half applied, this one, right? The 20% will not apply, but the 50% will. So that's how the stacking works with the familiar buffs.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense now.
That's why basically the only ones we're looking for is increased item drop rate, right? Because, well, increased item drop rate is a small amount, but you immediately want to move to this one because it's a free extra 20%, so it's really good. And then item drop rate large amount or item and meso drop rate large amount are the only other 2 that we're really looking for. Everything else here is just not necessary. This stacks together with the drop rate from your equips, so eventually that gets outscaled anyway. This can be useful later when you are going into like Cernium and stuff and you really need to kill with damage gear on. You can't really go for drop rate gear because you just won't have enough damage. So you want to make sure that the meso bags all drop, because you can't rely on this drop rate here to make sure that the bags drop. So then the combination line will actually be really useful. And then this one is just really good, again, in areas where you can rely on this drop rate, and then you can get more familiars to drop, more nodes, more symbols, you know, all of that stuff. And it's 50% more than this, which is amazing. So those are basically the only ones we're really looking for. And yeah, so here's some more information on like ideal situation, realistic situation, on what kind of drop rate that you might be looking for. And eventually, once you transition away from your full drop rate gear and maybe get more event rings and stuff like that, and you go into like your full damage gear, there's going to be like 2 or 3 items probably that are legendary, but that don't really have a function anymore. Maybe they were temporary damage gear, maybe they were temporary drop gear, and now they're kind of outscaled. And then you can always re-roll those for pure drop so that you can equip them and stack them instead of your meso equips. When you're killing bosses, for example, just to go for higher than 4 lines of drop rate, maybe you can go for 6, 7, 8, eventually up to maximum of 10, but you'll probably be stuck to 6 or 7 for quite a while. And that'll increase your chances of what we talked about, like the Dominator pendants, the kind of treasure rings, right? Maybe the primal essences, if you can get those to make Meister rings. Those more rare resources that just take a little bit more time for you to gather up.
Yeah.
Yeah, Legion grid building, we talked about that a little bit. Of course, you don't really have that many options right now, so it's totally fine. Remember that in the middle, you can press the little arrow if you need to, right? So you can reassign where the stats go if you want to make build a more easy setup, so you don't have to follow this shape, right?
Oh, okay.
So you can reassign in the middle where everything goes. So like if I use the same setup if I go on my marksman, but I'll just click strength here and click dex, and then where strength was, where dex was, I click strength, click OK, click confirm, and now this is dex and this is strength. So I don't have to move any pieces around. I can just go on my marksman now, because that's really the only difference, is the main stat and the secondary stat. I go on my demon avenger, I switch it to HP, switch this one to dex, boom, click save, and then I can keep the same.
Oh
setup.
yeah.
So that's the boom, 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 boom. Switch them all back. Damn. That'll also try again later. How about now? Cool. That'll just make it so that you don't. Yeah, you save a little bit of time, and the more pieces you have, the more annoying it would get. But it makes it easier because your first piece has to fit into the one of the 4 squares around the center, right? So that's why that bowman piece has to be there. But yeah, I mean, it's very min-max, but right now you already have like a 5 luck, right? That's kind of not being used. So if you would switch that one to strength and then move all the pieces from the top in there instead, you make sure you have the minimum amount of overlap into stats that you don't want, basically.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we talked about equips already in a lot of the situations. Do you have any equip questions right now? Because I feel like we, through explaining all the other stuff, we kind of touched on everything already, right?
Yeah, I think so as well. Like,
talked about transfer hammering.
Tons of information during this session.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Yeah.
Well, we talked about
I feel like
flames,
things are a lot more clear now.
Yeah, and you also know where all the information is, right? If you need anything, so you can find it quickly, and you can always find me in the chat. So anything that comes up.
Yeah.
I
think it's. Yeah, I think it's just like when you're new, like there's so many commands. Like you have a lot of commands, and it's like super helpful. But it's kind of like you don't really know what command to look for, right? Like
yeah, I try to make it as straightforward as possible. Just like if it's V matrix, boom, exclamation mark V matrix, or if it's links, it's like exclamation mark links. But sometimes they're like fused together, and like the progression one is a little bit of everything. So it might be a little bit daunting in the beginning, like, oh, there's too many numbers. But then once you start figuring out the individual pieces, it all makes sense how it's connected, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's like become, especially like in the past week, that this become like more and more clear.
Yeah.
So I think like this session was super helpful for me now, and I think I will probably make another one when I've decided on what to main like properly in a few months. Probably.
If you're still in love with the Paladin, or if you found a Legion mule that you were leveling, you were like, oh my god, this is so much better in every way, and then you want to completely switch over.
Like now that I've gotten like leveled a few characters that has teleport, I'm like this is pretty good stuff. Pretty good stuff.
Yeah, I personally, I think I like teleport
so nice.
way better for bossing, but I like flash jumping way better for mobbing.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like the jumping works so well with the Paladin when you have the spinning hammers around you.
Yeah, that's really nice.
It's so nice. But,
yeah, teleport would be bad because you would just miss the monsters in between.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the thing is also, the further you go, and once you start HMAG and like Vellum HMAG, a lot of bosses will have just stopped falling from the ceiling. And at that point, like rushing, dashing, teleporting is really good because you could do horizontal displacement without vertical displacement. You don't get closer to the stuff that's falling from the sky. And if you need to flash jump, you do vertical displacement as well. So you have to respond at different times to things. Because if you go up and the things are falling, right, they might actually hit you. But if you're teleporting, you can wait longer and do more attacks that way. So you have to boss differently with that mobility. So I like teleporting a lot for bossing.
Yeah, and I think that works like super well with Paladin because I have an iframe for like 30 seconds. But
and reduced damage as well.
Start like doing, but when I have to like do proper tactics in the future, I'm gonna be so fucked. Like I'm gonna be honest, it's gonna be gonna have the worst time. Yeah,
you have that early game advantage in that sense, yeah, and then you have to slowly as the amount of things that can kill you aren't like one time every 30 seconds anymore, but they're like every 2 seconds instead. Your positioning will get much more important. Especially once you get used to bossing on the Paladin, and you go to another character, you'll be like, holy shit, there's so much going on, I didn't even know. There's so much that can kill me.
Yeah.
I had that thing when I started with the Demon Avenger, and then like Crimson Queen does a lot of like the fire damage, right? The damage over time, and so as a Demon Avenger, you can just heal through all of it. You could just lifesteal through all of it, even through the Zombify, like doesn't really do anything to you. And you have a few skills as well to deal damage through Damage Reflect even. But then the first time I did it on another character, I was like, wait, this boss actually has mechanics? Oh my god, I have to be so careful. Yeah. And then you really, you learn to appreciate the game from different angles and with different penalties and different buffs, so that's really cool.
Yeah.
Alright, yeah, cool. I'll upload it to YouTube, you can double check it, and then I'll probably see some questions in the chat every now and then we'll hear about you in the future if you're in Big Dick Paladin main or if you're going to play a bunch of other characters.
Yeah, for sure, man. Thanks so much for the session.
Sounds good. Yeah, you're very welcome, and I'll talk to you in the future.
Yeah, see you, man.
Have a good one. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, cool. Yeah, so for everyone who's pretty new at the game, was getting into those 220s and figuring out that this is not just a children's game and that things can start getting pretty complicated with all of the amounts of stats and all of the access to content that you have. Hopefully this sheds some light on where to prioritize and what to look at to see if you're on the right track, or if you need to work a little bit harder, or if you can ease a little bit off the throttle there, take your foot off the gas, and you can do a little bit more, coasting, something like that, right? Yeah, hopefully that made that all a little bit clearer for you guys. As always, all of the links are available for free in the chat, so you can use ! And then whatever you want. If you can't find the right command, you can just ask in the chat. I will see it, or one of the very many helpful viewers in the chat will be able to see it, or already use the command for you and add your name, so you can just click the link and you're off to the races. If you want one of these one-on-one sessions, check the description of the video. All the necessary information is available there. You can also request one of these sessions if you are a subscriber in my Twitch chat and you watch the stream. You get stream points. With those points, you can also request a session. So that's a little bit more of a budget way. You have to watch the stream though, but a little bit more of a budget way to do one of these sessions. Or there's also two people who get a free session, who get to win every month by leaving comments on the YouTube video saying that you would like to win and that you think the video is amazing, of course. And I will draw 2 of those winners at the end of every month. So in about 10 days, usually a little bit late. So in about 2 weeks, we'll probably draw 2 winners there. So leave a comment if you would like to win there. Other than that, make sure you check out the other videos or check out the stream. If you have any questions, I stream every day live over at twitch.tv/Scardor. So either I'll see you there or have fun watching another video. Thanks for watching.